UFC Fight Night Song versus Simone takes place in 2 days. I'm going to be going over every single fight, giving you my picks, starting with the first fight of the night and probably the worst fight of the night. Haley Cohen and Jamie Lynn Horth. Not going to take too much time on this one. Haley Cohen should not be a UFC fighter. In all honesty, we all know why she's here. Dana said she has the it factor. I think everyone knows what Dana means when he says the it factor with Haley Cohen. But her skills aren't really there. In all honesty, she lost to Kelly Clayton, a 1-2 opponent, got rocked and then choked out. It's not even just that she got submitted. She shot it back. First of all, gets rocked bad in that fight, panic shoots, and gets guillotined by a 1-2 opponent. Even on the Contender Series, she wins a split decision. She's just really not that good. Her grappling is really bad. Her striking is okay, but her grappling is just awful. She is a good athlete, former college athlete, so it's she does have an athletic background, but she's not a fighter. As far as Jamie Lynn Horth, she has gotten a lot of submission wins and knockout wins in her career. She's a brown belt in jiu-jitsu. I just think she should be able to get it done here. Undefeated. Haley Cohen can't grapple. Jamie Lynn Horth should find a way to get it done, possibly by submission. Next up is Journey Newson and Marcus McGee. Marcus McGee fighting out of MMA Lab in Arizona. Journey Newson fighting out of Impact Jiu-Jitsu, I believe cross-training a little bit at ATT Portland. I think Newson actually is training with Ricky Simone for this camp a little bit that I've seen, so definitely I'll throw that out there. I think that'll help him a lot. Although he was supposed to fight Brian Kelleher. Brian Kelleher pulled out of the fight, which is probably a good thing for him because I believe Kelleher would have lost that fight. Kelleher is a shell of his former... Well, I shouldn't really say shell of his former self. He never really was amazing in the UFC. But just not in his prime, I'll say. Not in his prime, not the guy he once was, as far as athletically or just in general. I can't really say why he pulled out, but regardless of that, it doesn't really matter. Marcus McGee steps in. Just watching Marcus McGee's last fight against Luciano Ramos, that guy, oh man, that guy is so bad. And I mean, when I say so bad, I mean his opponent was so horrifically bad, would just flop to his back at any chance he got. He was from the Nick Diaz Academy, so I guess he thought it was cool to kind of be like Nick Diaz and flop to his back. It wasn't really cool at all or anything like that. He just looked dumb, and he's just not a good fighter either. So Marcus McGee beating him, that guy's no striking. So Marcus McGee beating him doesn't really mean much to me. And I just don't think Marcus McGee's really amazing. He's, a little bit younger than Journey Newson, but they're a year apart. So it's not he's a lot younger. Maybe if he was 10 years younger and a prospect, I'd be all right, maybe he might be able to beat Journey Newson, but I don't think Marcus McGee's that great. Journey Newson should have a clear advantage in the grappling department. And maybe the card could start with 2 submission wins, possibly. I do think Journey Newson gets it done, though. Next up is Stephanie Egger and Irina Alekseeva. Irina calls herself Russian Ronda, which is very interesting because she has 1 submission win in her career. She has 1 submission win in her entire career, and she's calling herself Russian Ronda Rousey. Come on, man. And the 1 submission win you have against is a 5-6 opponent, a trash can. Loses to an 8-6 opponent on the regional scene and then beats Stephanie Page in Bellator. It's come on, now you're fighting Stephanie Egger. You're fighting the real, someone that actually knows how to fight, someone that's been in the UFC and fought good competition like Tracy Cortez. Tracy Cortez is a good fighter. Who else? Mayra Bueno Silva, pretty good fighter. Aylin Perez, decent fighter. All of that I think are better than Irina Alekseeva. I don't really know why she's, why the UFC made this fight. Some of these fights on this card are just very odd, very weird to me why the UFC decided to put them on. I guess they got the ESPN deal now. They need to put fights on every single week, so they throw fights like these together. But Stephanie Egger, if she's anything at all, she should win this fight. Now, this is a tough one for me to pick. It is Cody Durden versus Energy Charles Johnson. When I first broke this down, I was saying, I kind of like Charles Johnson. I like his style. He has that kind of Bobby Green. Not, I don't want to say he's like exactly like Bobby Green, but he reminds me a little bit of him. If you know, you know. Got that like the boxing type of swag of Bobby Green. I don't think he's nearly as good of a boxer. Don't get me wrong. I think Bobby Green's a much better boxer and a better fighter in general. But like he has that similar kind of style or to him. If you get what I'm saying there. Um, but Cody Durden is a grinding, heavy type of wrestler. That's what he does. He's going to shoot over and over. He's not going to, even if he gets tired, he's still going to try to push the pace. And I will say this: when he gets on top, like from the fights I've seen of Cody Durden, when he does get on top of his opponents, like in the last fight against Carlos Moda, like he stayed on top. You know what I mean? It's like he can control guys. It might be a little bit harder to control someone like Charles Johnson on the mat, but like I said, if he does get him down, like he does show that he has pretty good control and good wrestling. And I believe he is training out of ATT in Atlanta, but I think he also has been getting work in at the regular ATT in Florida with some of those guys. So I think it's a very intriguing fight. It's an interesting fight for me to break down and pick. I think the line. I know the line's come down from -200. I don't think the line should be Charles Johnson -200. I think it's more accurate about where it is now. Cody Durden a slight underdog at like +110, and Charles Johnson like -130 or so. I think that's about like more fair odds. Um, all in all, though, I think it's really tough for me to pick. I've been kind of switching back and forth throughout the week, but I'm going to go with Cody Durden. I'm going to go with Cody Durden because as good as I think Charles Johnson is very good on the feet. I think he's better than Cody Durden, but he has shown holes before, and he does have good takedown defense. Don't get me wrong, he has good takedown defense, but I think the relentlessness of Durden, um, Johnson leaving his hands low could get him caught. I'm not going to say Durden knocks him out, but Johnson does leave his hands down, does kind of put his chin up in the air. If Durden, fakes going low and then comes up top with an overhand, you never know. It could be able to clip Johnson, maybe even steal around here and there. Like maybe he steals around if he rocks Johnson in the close round. Um, I got to go with Cody Durden, and also Cody Durden's never been knocked out, so that's not really the biggest threat for me. I think in a close fight, the one that's going to be the one having the more output is going to win, and I also think Cody Durden can be the one with more output, always pushing the pace, always looking to create. Next fight is Martin Buday and Jake Collier. Oh man, where do I even start with Jake Collier? He lost to Chris Barnett in his last fight. He's really bad. Jake Collier is really, really bad. And he's bad because, he was a fighter. He was a middleweight, right? He was a middleweight, and he was like a middleweight in pretty good shape. And then he just balloons up 100 pounds, about 100 pounds. I believe he has to cut weight now, so probably over 100 pounds. Jake Collier has gained. And it's like, he's just not as like he does have some. I've heard people say it's good volume and stuff. It's like sure he might have good volume, but Martin Buday, 11-1, should not have won his last fight against Lucas Bresky. Beat him by a split decision, but he really didn't win. He got outstruck badly. I was shocked when I was watching that. I actually watched that live, and I was like, I thought it was insane. I was like, wow, that's a bad robbery. That was clear 29-28 to Bresky. But either way, I think Collier, as I mentioned, just so incredibly bad. Lost to Chris Barnett. I think Martin Buday will show here that he's a true heavyweight. Jake Collier he'll show him that he's really not that good because I don't think he is. If you look at the wins of Jake Collier, they haven't really aged incredibly well, if we're being honest. He submitted Chase Sherman. Chase Sherman has zero grappling whatsoever. Not impressive in the slightest. Beats John Vellante, who, again, Chris Barnett knocked John Vellante out with like what was it, like one of those like spinning like wheel kicks or some like weird shit like that Chris Barnett actually knocked out Vellante with. So Collier beating him by decision is not impressive. And then he beats a few other guys that aren't really that good if you look further back in his record. So I'm going with Martin Buday to get it done. Next up is Josh Quinlan and Trey Waters. I think this is pretty clear. In all honesty, I'm going with Josh Quinlan. Now, Trey Waters is huge for the division, 6'5" at welterweight. I don't know how the guy makes the weight. 6'5" at welterweight. That just tells me one thing. If you guys know Yanao Ashmaz versus Sam Patterson, for those of you that remember that fight, it's going to be similar to that in my opinion. I know Josh Quinlan's a pretty big guy. He's not a big guy for the division, but he's strong for the division. But regardless, I think it's one of those where Josh Quinlan has a lot of power, and if he touches your chin, you can go to sleep. Sam Patterson had never been knocked out before. Ashmas touched his chin, and Patterson, being a guy that's 6'3" at lightweight, cuts a ton of weight. If he gets hit clean, he can get put out. We saw it with him. I think we're going to see it with Trey Waters here at welterweight, being 6'5" and cutting that much weight. So I think he will take his first. He hasn't been knocked out. I think he'll take his first knockout loss here to Quinlan. I will say, though, Quinlan did pop in the Logan Urban fight. He was on the sauce, so that was I guess the fight didn't count or whatever. Regardless, though, he comes back. He probably still is on the sauce, in all honesty. Beats Jason Witt, who's chinny as all hell, but still knocked him out cold. So I think this is a very dangerous fight for Trey Waters. And I think if he gets touched by a guy like Quinlan, he's going to sleep. Next is Waldo Cortez Acosta versus Marcos Rogerio de Lima. I wanted to pick Waldo Cortez Acosta, but I really don't think he's that good. So I'm going to go with Marcos Rogerio de Lima. And this is worrying. I will say this is definitely worrying. Waldo Cortez Acosta should be in the prime of his athletic career. If you want to say he's 31, Marcos Rogerio de Lima is about to be 38. So that kind of gives you a little bit of oh man, Rogerio de Lima, he's a little bit older. It's a little bit more to worry about. But Waldo Cortez Acosta, it's not like he's knocking guys out. If you look, he's won by decision in his first two UFC fights against Chase Sherman and Jared Vanderaa. And it wasn't like he was that impressive in either one of those fights, in all honesty, either. In the fight against Jared Vanderaa landed a ton of leg kicks on him, just a ton, right? Landed a ton throughout the fight. And if, when I was looking on MMA decisions, most people had it, 29-28 Cortez Acosta, but you had a few of the people scoring it 29-28 the other way for Vanderaa. Not that I think Vanderaa won the fight, but it was a competitive fight with all the leg kicks doing damage to Cortez Acosta. And Jared Vanderaa is really terrible. So if Cortez Acosta isn't blowing guys like that out of the water, I think Marcos Rogerio de Lima, sure, he lost to Blake Ivanov. He got submitted in a round by Romanov. He has a few, most of his losses in his career by submission, really, if you look at it. And I don't think Cortez Acosta is going to submit him. I think this is more of Rogerio de Lima should be able to tag him up on the feet. If this goes all three, I could see it going to Waldo, but I got to say Marcos Rogerio de Lima has shown he's got real power. He's knocked out some guys. Sure, some of them are older, you can say. Andre Arlovski, older, rocked him and then submitted him. Really hurt him too. Rocked him bad and then submitted him. Arlovski was looking pretty good before that, or at least decent, right? He has a few wins, sure, some split decisions over Vanderaa and Collier, but hadn't really been knocked out in that span, or really hurt bad, dropped, anything like that in that span either, is what I really should say. But it's just I don't think Waldo Cortez Acosta is really that great, and he's also in Arizona, in the Phoenix area. So if he was training at a gym that was good, I think MMA Labs down there, obviously fight ready. If he was at one of those gyms, I would say, yeah, definitely he might be the side here, especially as an underdog. But I got to go Marcos Rogerio de Lima, training out of an American Top Team, the better gym, and should overall have fought in the better guys and be the better fighter. Next is Julian Erosa and Fernando Padilla. We'll go with Padilla. Fernando Padilla, he is a guy that, I look at against Julian Erosa and I'm like, all right, Julian Erosa has been knocked out a ton. Julian Erosa has, how many knockout losses does this guy have? Six knockout losses, and he's not, it's not like you're fighting on heavyweight and you got knocked out by some heavyweights. This is at like a lower weight class. This is at 145 that this guy's getting knocked out by guys like Alex Caceres, Sung Woo Choi, and he's got knocked out twice by head kicks. That head kick against Caceres was pretty nasty. I'll admit that. Would have knocked out a lot of guys, but still, he's getting caught. And when he does get caught, he gets dropped. So it's worrying, is what I'll say. It's worrying, his chin. But against Fernando Padilla, it's one of those where it's like, all right, you're fighting Fernando Padilla, who is the prospect in this fight, who is pretty good. But I think his chance of winning Fernando's is to, catch Erosa early, potentially in the first round of this fight. And I don't see it happening. I think Julian Erosa is just too experienced, fighting out of, training out of Extreme Couture. I think it's one of those where it's like, it is one where Erosa's chin is questionable, and Erosa is a lot less of a favorite now. I think he's like a minus 130 even, or like the odds are like evening. But I just got to go with Erosa, the much more experienced fighter. He's fought almost 40 fights. Sure, he's been knocked out, and then he's returning on short, not really, kind of short. Now he's been 2 months out of the game at this point. So it's like, all right, you're coming back after 2 months. You've been knocked out really badly in the last one. It's very worrying for me to pick him, but the reason, like I said, I'm picking him is just the UFC experience he has, the quality of fighters he's fought against, and Fernando Padilla losing to Spike Carlisle. I'm sure it was 4 years ago, but it's not like he's fought great competition. For that reason, I have to go Erosa. Would I be surprised if Fernando comes in and knocks him out? I wouldn't at all, because it's just one of those where Erosa can be chinny at times. Next up is Cody Brundage and Rodolfo Vieira. I'm going with Rodolfo Vieira. Cody Brundage, solid fighter, training out of Factory X, which is a pretty good gym, good striking gym, I should say. Mainly I like their striking out of Factory X. Rob Wilkinson, actually one of my favorite fighters out of that gym, who some of you may or may not know about. PFL guy, just beat Thiago Santos. He actually was wrestling a lot in that fight. But regardless, I should say actually really Factory, I should say it's an all-around gym, because they can, there's some guys in there that can wrestle well and have decent jiu-jitsu as well. So, but we're talking about Rodolfo Vieira here that Cody Brundage is fighting. Rodolfo Vieira, his last fight was against the action man, Chris Curtis himself. And I really do like Chris Curtis. For those of you that don't know, Chris Curtis, I picked him against Gastelum. Obviously, he didn't get it done there, but I really do think Chris Curtis is a good boxer, good fighter overall. Like, very good takedown defense. Like, he's a tough guy to beat, Chris Curtis. And Rodolfo Vieira shot a ton of takedowns in that fight, couldn't get him down. But on the feet, he didn't look bad. He lost 29-28. Didn't get knocked out by Curtis. Curtis hits really damn hard. So I don't think Cody Brundage is going to knock out Rodolfo Vieira. And I think the striking is relatively, like, I do think will be probably relatively competitive. I do think, though, if Rodolfo Vieira gets Brundage to the ground, I think Brundage is in real trouble, and in Brundage, his last fight, he got knocked out by Mikhail Oleksiejczuk. That was 3 months ago. Beat Tresean Gore 8 months ago. Tresean Gore is, not the best in my opinion. Really, he was throwing naked in that fight. He was throwing naked leg kicks. Tresean was throwing naked leg kicks. Not keeping his hands up. Gets caught and knocked out. Just not an experienced fighter. Tresean Gore, not a great fighter at this point. Beats Dalcha Limgambula, who, again, I really don't think very highly of. And then loses to Nick Maximov. Gets out-grappled by Nick Maximov. Nick Maximov is not even in the UFC anymore. So it's like, his wins have not really aged amazingly. And that loss I guess Mikhail Zajac is pretty solid, but especially that loss against Maximov didn't really age well. So I'm going to go Rodolfo Vieira. I do think he is good enough to get it done. I don't know if he'll be able to find a submission. Sure, he's found a lot of submissions in his other UFC wins, but um, I do think he probably could win a decision if he goes there. But Rodolfo Vieira should be able to get it done. We'll say by submission, though. The co-main event, Caio Borralho versus Mikhail Oleksiejczuk. I'm going with Caio Borralho, and the reason is Caio, he's a very good grappler, excellent grappler, trained with Damian Maia, um, which I think is if you're talking about just pure grappling, that's one of the best guys to train with, Damian Maia. Absolute, especially for MMA grappling, absolute beast. Borralho and Mikhail both in their prime here, so both guys very good. So it is one of those where it's like, okay, tough fight to predict when you first look at it, but then you see Mikhail Oleksiejczuk, a lot of his wins are first round knockouts, right? Cody Brundage, first round knockout. Sam Alvey, first round knockout. Shamil Gamzatov, first round knockout. Wins a split over Modestas Bukauskas, who I think Modestas actually won that fight. When I broke down Modestas versus Tyson Pedro, that was. And I actually picked Modestas to beat Tyson Pedro. Just throwing that out there for everyone. Not trying to talk too highly of myself, just mentioning. And then loses to submission losses to Jimmy Crute and OSP. And that definitely should come in handy here. 2 submission losses, Jimmy Crute and Ovince St. Preux. What does Caio Borralho do? Grapples extremely well, and I mean very well. Can get to the back of guys extremely at a good clip, and can do it for multiple rounds, and that's how he can win fights. Mikhail Oleksiejczuk's got a lot of power. I think round 1, it's going to be dangerous for him. He's got to survive. But if he gets Mikhail Oleksiejczuk to the ground, Mikhail's going to be in trouble. Borralho should either be able to control him or find the submission if he does get him there. Either way, I am going with Caio Borralho to get it done. And in the main event of the evening, we have Song Yadong Song taking on Ricky Simón. Ricky Simón is very good. He reminds me a lot of Merab Dvalishvili, which is a good thing because I picked Merab to beat Jan. I do think Merab's very good. With that being said, though, I have to. It's tough. It's very tough, but I have to go with Song Yadong. The more I've thought about it, the more I've heard different people's opinions of how this fight could play out, and the more I've seen of these guys, just watching these guys, breaking these guys down. Against Corey Sandhagen, Song Yadong, he was on 2 of the 3 judges' scorecards. It was tied going into the 5th. On 1 judge's scorecard, it was Corey was up 3 rounds to 1, but going into the 5th round, that fight was an even fight, according to 2 judges, right? An even fight. And who knows what would happen in the 5th round, right? Who knows? Maybe Song Yadong, if he didn't have that cut over his head, or over his eye, if he didn't have that cut, I think maybe he could have gotten it done. Maybe he could have gotten it done. And Corey Sandhagen, we just saw what he did to Cheeto. Easily disposed of Cheeto. Well, I don't want to say disposed of him. He went the distance, but it was a clear win for Corey. Seeing what Song just did, seeing the performance Song had against Corey Sandhagen, it's very impressive. Simón is not that type of fighter, so he is going to just probably shoot a lot. But Song Yadong, training at a Team Alpha Male, which is one of the best gyms for wrestling in the sport, just to train your wrestling. It really is. Uriah Faber running that gym. Got a ton of good wrestlers in there. Probably training with guys, obviously, like Josh Emmett. You got Mendez in there. You got plenty of other high-level wrestlers that can help you out. I just think that Ricky Simón, I feel like what I should say is I feel like Song is getting the looks. I feel like Song is getting the looks in training that should be able to prepare him well for this fight. I think everyone kind of sees that Simón, he's got that kind of, style of just heavy wrestling. He's going to shoot it over and over. Good submission skill set. But if Song does defend those takedowns and he can keep this on the feet, I think he's going to have an extreme advantage in terms of the power, in terms of just the striking skill set he has. And he's a younger guy, should be improving at a faster clip. Give me Song Yadong to win. The more I think about this, the more I'm leaning Song. So, all in all, not the best fight card. A lot of 50-50 type of fights. Some underdogs I think are getting it done. Some favorites as well, most favorites as well. Even though it, like I said, it is 50-50 on a lot of these, so it wouldn't surprise me if some underdogs get it done, like Padilla. If Padilla gets it done, again, first round knockout could be a great potential against Erosa. However, Erosa I feel like is the more complete fighter at this point. And if you go down the card, a lot of other, Martin Buday, Jake Collier, Buday should win, but you never know with heavyweights. Haley Cohen, Jamie Lynn Horth, another one. It's two low-level women's MMA fighters, so it'll probably go the distance. And even if Jamie Lynn Horth, controls most of the fight, you never know with the judges. So all in all, though, good fight. There are good fights coming up. Thank you guys very much for watching, and